All right, everybody. Welcome to the Tonto's Demise Week 4 recap. Let's see, that was Little Stray Cats there. Had a hard time thinking of what song to play for the open up with this week, but then I thought, standing there at work thinking, all the guys who came to the dinner on the day before the draft, all the guys who had dinner at Rizzo's there, and fell in love with the 16-year-old hostess, Dom's daughter. Just in case you're interested in knowing, she is now 17, so I thought that song would be maybe a little bit appropriate for for you guys. Feel a little bit better about that. But anyway, let's get down to business, shall we? We didn't really have any super close matchups like we had last week. We had a couple close ones, a couple blowouts, mostly blowouts, really. As it's been, seems like many times so far this year, most of the matchups aren't really end up being that close. Unfortunately, it's much more interesting to watch, much more stressful if you're one of the ones involved, coming down to a Monday night game when your matchup isn't decided until maybe the into the end of the fourth quarter there, somewhere near the end of the game, as long as it could possibly take for you to get to an outcome. But let's see. I will say, though, it didn't mention, I think on the lineup, that I think my matchup with Tree, and I believe also Disco and Detling, their matchups were already decided before the Sunday night game. We were already all our players on our team were 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock games there. So it was nice to get a win, but it was also kind of nice to not have to think about football anymore Sunday night and just actually enjoy the day on Monday. So maybe I just care or think about it too much that it bothers me like that. But that's just me. Anyway, let's get down to week 4. As always, we start with the defending champion, Yinzer Jags, and like I said, he went up against Disco. Disco trying to get his first win of the year and not drop to 0-4. He was able to do it this week. Actually, it was a pretty close matchup. Final score here, 161.4 to 153.55. For Disco, we had Aaron Rodgers, of course, on Thursday night. He went off for almost 70 points. Did he have an interception near the end of that game? I can't remember. But I believe he did, huh? He thought, wasn't there, yeah, they tried to throw when they should have been passing, and that, deflected pass in the end zone or something, right? So he actually had 70, but then he dropped down to 60. You'll take it. You'll take 67.7 probably. After his previous 3 weeks had been 33, 38, and 33. So he scored pretty much in week 4 what he scored in weeks 1 and 3 put together. So we'll see what happens. Devontae Adams, of course, had the game of his life. Could do nothing wrong. Everything fell into place for him pretty early on in that game. Unfortunately, he got injured then. Not sure the extent of that injury. You'll have to wait and see. I believe it's a turf toe. We'll have to wait and see how long he's going to be out. So that could pose a problem here. Aaron Rodgers might regress back to his 35-point performances. We'll see. Then for Disco, he had Julio Jones, Josh Gordon, and John Brown. Julio, no touchdown this week, first time in quite a while, I have to say. 9.3, Gordon 7.5, and John Brown just under 12. Your running backs, David Johnson and Miles Sanders, 22 for Johnson, 7 for Sanders. The baller, Waller, your tight end, another 12.3 for him. He's been pretty consistent, doing 7 for 70, 6 for 60, 13 for 130, and what's a little bit 7 for 50. So a little bit of an underperformance there from him. If he's going to have 7 catches, he should have at least right about 70 yards. But anyway, you went in the flex, and I think we all heard about this one. We all are very well aware that you went against Chris Godwin, your keeper this week, your boy, and we all know how that went as he scored 42.5 points. Fortunately for you, it didn't cost a win here, but those extra points certainly would have come in handy because Curtis Samuel got you about 6.5, so about a 38 point difference there. Could have possibly moved you up in the standings a little bit. But those are the breaks, and I'm pretty sure you will not be sitting Chris Godwin for the rest of the year, no matter who they're playing against or what happens. So it's been fun, Curtis Samuel. We'll see you back to the bench, or maybe John Brown. I'm not sure how you want to go there. Kicker, Matt Bryant, 4 points. Minnesota defense looks like Yahoo says 7. I believe the actual total there must have been not much more than that, maybe 10, 10, maybe 12 or 13, because your point total isn't too much off, or isn't much higher than what Yahoo is saying there. But it was enough to get past Yinzer Jags this week, perhaps because he had to roll without Kittle this week. He was on bye, no Breida this week, and you had to put in some backups. Perhaps in a set an 8-point difference here. Perhaps those big guys that cost you in the long run here. But let's see. Kyler Murray, just under 40. Another thing here, problem, I don't know what's going on. DeAndre Hopkins, only 6.1 points. And I see he had an interception. Did he attempt a pass in this game? But yeah, he has gone absolutely ice cold in terms of DeAndre Hopkins stat lines here. Past 3 weeks, I had 9, 12, and 6 after his 31-point burst in week 1. Yeah, not sure what's going on there. DeAndre Hopkins putting up a couple single-digit scores here the past few weeks. That's a surprise. That's definitely probably not going to last either. So unfortunately for Yinzer Jags, he could have used a little bit of a bounce back here from Hopkins. And Keenan Allen, too. Looks like he only scored you 9.5 points. So 2 disappointing scores from, I would have to say, your 2 biggest guns here, Hopkins and Allen. You flipped up on your quarterbacks a little bit. Didn't cost you there because you actually got a couple more points from Murray than you would have from Daniel Jones. But your other wide receiver, I should say, Robert Woods, he popped off this week for 32.5 points. He had been single digits all year pretty much up until this point. He was due for an explosion there. And I have to say, this week was pretty much, if you didn't have, said Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams on Thursday night, this around the league wasn't a huge scoring week for a lot of fantasy players, unless you had somebody in that Tampa Bay, I wanted to say St. Louis, Los Angeles Rams game. That they put up almost at least 100 points, I think, between the two of them there, if not pretty close. What was the score? 95 points they put up. So, yeah, big scores from pretty much everybody involved there, and not too much around the rest of the league. So, let's see. Running backs, Devontae Freeman, James White, 18 and 14. I said you had to pick up a tight end because you had no Kittle this week. You went with Vernon Davis. He only got you 1.5 points. That'll sting. Waited till the last minute. Possibly could have picked up the guy from Buffalo, Knox. Is that his name? I think might have been a better play. But Tree jumped on him a while back. I don't know if it was on waivers last week or like right after. Even though you already knew that you were going to need a tight end this week, maybe that could have changed the outcome of this matchup. Ito Smith, you had to plug him in because you had no Breida or Rashad Penny, I believe. He was also out. But you did manage to get a touchdown out of him, 11 points there in your flex. Tucker, your kicker, about 6 or 7 points. And then you went with the Jacksonville defense at Denver. Looks like they won the game, but I believe they didn't do very good on yardage and things like that. According to Yahoo, Jacksonville's defense was your lowest scoring of your 4 defenses. Kind of mentioned this earlier in the year. Gonna keep harping on it, no matter, because it's gonna keep happening more often than not. I suspect that your bench defenses are going to give you fits because you're going to look down and think, what I could have done that could have changed the outcome of this game. And you may sit there and say, oh no, it doesn't bother me. I'm fine with the decision I made. I got to go with the decision I made. But I understand that. You go into it. It's easy to sit here now and say, oh, you should have played any other defense than you did. Well, maybe except Denver. So matchup-wise, going into the matchups, obviously, perhaps Jacksonville, was that your best option? Looking at the matchups, most likely, on paper at least, I think there were some surprises there with Dallas and Cleveland in their games, but it's still, I think it's got to be a nag. Every time it happens, it's gonna nag you, and just to know, look back and say, coulda, woulda, shoulda on my defenses there. When you've got only maybe like 2 choices, the chances of you making the wrong choice, and maybe having more contempt in your defeat is a little bit easier. But hey, suit yourself. It's gonna happen. I think I said it happened last week, and here we are again this week. So, but it's easy. So again, easy for me to sit here and say you played the wrong defense because we're looking back on it now. So, what do I know? Anyway, Disco with this win, he moves to 1-3. Yinzer Jags falls to 1-3, and Disco is actually right on top of Yinzer in the standings. He is in 10th place, and Yinzer Jags are in 11th place. Defending champ, all the way down in 11th place. All right, which matchup was the matchup of the week? I think it was Kevin Dubsy Hooligans versus Jay. They were two 2-1 teams going against each other. Somebody was going to get their 3rd win, and it was the Dubsy Hooligans. He squeaks this, no, not squeaks this one out. A couple things didn't go too well for 10 XL entries this week, and it cost him final score 163.15 to 140.95. Let's see, taking a look at the Dub C Hooligans, he had Lamar Jackson, 49 points. His 3 receivers, Larry Fitzgerald, Brandon Cooks, and Tyler Lockett. Brandon Cooks, perhaps the one of the bigger low scores of the Tampa Bay Rams matchup here. Fitzgerald went for 9.5, Cooks went for 13, and Lockett only 9 points there. Ingram and Mixon, your 2 running backs, only 8 and 10. Kind of disappointing there. But said it didn't matter because you still won the matchup here. Definitely take a win over anything else. I would have liked those extra points. Always want those extra points to affect the, perhaps somewhere down the line in the playoff hunt, the standings there. Always looking for those extra points. But at this point in the season, to definitely take a win over anything else here. Zach Ertz, your tight end, 13.5. Chark in the flex, 8.5. Elliott, your kicker, only 4. And then the Patriots defense, kind of surprising here. At Buffalo, thought they would do a little bit better, but they put up another 40 or so points here. Yahoo says 32, and your total is only 6 points higher, so the total must have been 38 there. So almost another 40 points from them. Looks like 4 turnovers, a touchdown. They blocked a kick. Did pretty good on giving up points and stuff. So yeah, another big game for them. I think Buffalo actually did okay on yardage there. So it wasn't a big bump from what Yahoo says to the actual total there. So kind of surprising there, and I think we're expecting that New England's defense to fall off at least a little bit there. I think we're kind of getting there, but this week they held up and did pretty good there. So you got almost 100 points there from your quarterback and your defense. So it would have been about 90 or so. But a lot of single-digit scores there. In the rest of your lineup, fortunately, it did not cost you this week. Take a look at 10 Excel entries. He went with Dak Prescott this week over Deshaun Watson. Only a 4-point difference there. Prescott, he had 30, just under 31. Watson wouldn't have really changed things for you. Going to be interesting to see how you go back and forth during the rest of the season between deciding who to play, Prescott and Watson there, or if you decide to make a trade with one of those guys if somebody needs a quarterback somewhere down the line here. Otherwise, it's going to be a tough call every week on which one of those guys you're going to play. Sometimes it's going to work, sometimes it's not. Let's see, receivers, Michael Thomas, Adam Thielen, and Will Fuller. Excuse me. Michael Thomas, 18.5. Thielen, another dud for him, only 2.5 points. Not sure what's going on in Minnesota there with their passing game. Thielen did have 2 touchdowns last week against the Isotopes, of course. But yeah, that is probably an anomaly here for Adam Thielen. I believe he called out his quarterback, called out his team, said they need to pass more, they need to play better, and do things differently all around. And the squeaky wheel always gets oiled. So perhaps here in week 5, Adam Thielen will be getting the ball quite a bit. Fuller, only 5.5 points there. James Conner had a pretty good game, a lot of catches and yards there. He went for 26.5 points. Sony Michel, kind of another dud for him, only 6.5. Greg Olsen, dud for him, 2.5. Randall Cobb in flex, only 7 points there. Let's see, Gostowski, your kicker, actually only 2 points from him. Something like that. And then the Chicago Bears defense actually did pretty well. Yahoo says 20. Excuse me. I'm looking at multiple numbers here at the same time here. Yahoo says 21, but your actual total looks like it was about 18 points higher than what Yahoo says. So their score must have been close to 40. So pretty even, good defensive matchup here. But unfortunately for 10 Excel entries, the quarterback difference here really hurt you. And said tight end, flex play, said only Thielen really hurt you. So you played your best guys, but they just unfortunately couldn't come through for you this week. 10 Excel entries, he drops to 2-2 in 7th place. Not too bad place to be right now. Dub C. Hooligans, he moves up to 3-1, and he jumps all the way up to 3rd place. Next, we had a yawn of a matchup, a real shit show of teams, I have to say, coming into week 4 here. The Yahoo recap describes the Springfield Isotopes as offensively challenged, and I couldn't agree with you more at this point in the season. But they're able to get past Possum Magic this week. Final score, 138.85 to 125.75. So unfortunately for Possum Magic, and fortunately for the Isotopes, the only team that they would have beaten this week is the team that they played. So a little bit of luck getting to 2-2 this week. Patrick Mahomes, no touchdowns this week, kind of a surprise. He seemed to struggle a little bit against the Detroit Lions defense. They came after him, put him under a lot of pressure. Didn't do too well, but adapted to the game. Ended up with a pretty decent score there, 48 points. Receivers, Sammy Watkins, Tyrell Williams, and Preston Williams. 6.5, 12.5, 8.5 respectively. Aaron Jones, just under 18 points. And perhaps a terrible decision here, going with Melvin Gordon, popping him in at literally the last minute. I possibly could have. I kind of wish that I had run out of time because it would have been worked out better. Fortunately, thank goodness, it didn't cost the matchup here as he scored 0. But the game did kind of play out the way that I expected. I'm kind of surprised that with a 20-point lead, perhaps in the fourth quarter, I'm really surprised that they didn't put Gordon in there just to maybe get his legs under him, get some game experience, not really throw hard things at him. Just get a couple runs, just to get you back into the flow of the NFL game there. I thought really that they would do that, but I don't believe he touched the field at all. So easy to say that a lot of people were saying, don't play him because that's what's going to happen. But I thought it was worth a chance. Said again, he could have. I'm surprised that they didn't give him a little bit of garbage time, playing time, just to get his feet wet back in game action there. But anyway, enough about that. Tight end Jason Witten, 7 points. Julian Edelman, only 7 points. Zane Gonzalez, kicker, only 2 points. And the Chargers defense going up against Miami. A good matchup for pretty much anyone's defense here. I believe the final score was about 30. There's a bump there of about 15 or so from what Yahoo said. Enough to get past Possum Magic this week, who had Jacoby Brissett, actually a tie with Patrick Mahomes. Exact same scores, 48.15. Your receivers, Christian Kirk, D.D. Westbrook, and Cole Beasley. 8.5, 11.5, 14.5 respectively. So things favored you there a little bit. Jacobs and Thompson, your running backs. You took out Montgomery. Let's see. That looks like it was the best play. McLaurin was injured. I see on your bench. You took him out. So you went with Jacobs, who got you just under 13, and Thompson got you an even 10. If you had kept Montgomery in there, it would only been like a half-point difference there. And here's the guy we were talking about a little bit before, Knox. What's his name? Dawson Knox? Dawson's Creek Knox? I believe his middle name is Creek. Little known fact. But he had 8.8 points there. Would that have been... I don't think that would have covered the matchup versus Disco and Detling there if you had picked him up. Because, let's see, between Vernon Davis, that was a 7.3 point difference there. And that would not have been enough to get you the win. But I digress. And another surprising thing in this matchup here was Marlon Mack. He got you just under 4 points, although perhaps not surprising to me at least. Probably some other people. Marlon Mack injured during the game, ankle injury. He seems to be one of those injury-prone guys who, personally, I would be surprised if he's ever on my team just because he's a guy I am most likely risk-averse and will stay away from just because he seems to either have a huge game or he breaks your heart with an injury. And all too often he is injured, it seems to me. He's just one of those guys I will avoid. You can feel free to roll the dice on him anytime you want. I mean, he's already been on several teams here in 2019. Maybe he'll find his way to one or two more teams before the season is over. Then kicker was Fairbairn. He got you about 3.5. And Colts defense looks like they actually got you. Yahoo says 7, but I think because they lost and a lot of yardage all over the place, didn't do too much there. I think the actual score was 4. So you actually lost a couple points there. Unusual based on what Yahoo said there. But yeah, not enough for Possum Magic. He drops again. He is 1-3. He is back in the basement in 12th place. And Springfield Isotopes, they move up to 2-2. They are in 8th place. Next up, let's see, Gags to Riches versus Dirt McGirt. This one probably could have gone the other way for Dirt McGirt had he played most other people in the league this week, but unfortunately, he got steamrolled by Gags to Riches, who is on a roll, just crushing people with his his lineup. I don't know how he's doing it, but 256 points this week, 256.3 to be exact, knocks off Dirt McGirt, who scored a respectable 170.15. Take a look at Gags here. He had Phillip Rivers go for 50, Cooper Kupp 27, Marvin Jones 10.5, Sterling Shepard 17, Todd Gurley 26, McCoy 17, Kelsey 15.5, Jarvis Landry 27.5, Zerline 14 or so, and the New York Giants defense picked them up at the last minute, played them against the Washington Redskins, who can't seem to decide on a quarterback. And if they do decide on a quarterback, he is turnover happy. I think Haskins threw a bunch of interceptions. They couldn't do anything. I guess they scored a defensive touchdown, the pick 6. Only gave up 3 points there. Yahoo says 30, but I believe the actual total, looking at how things jumped up here for you, was actually closer to 45 or so. So really just everything fell into place. That anything that could have gone right for Gags went right this week, as he goes over 250 points. Most likely going to be the highest point total of the season. Definitely so far. It would be my guess that that's the total that doesn't get cracked for the rest of the season. Always a possibility, but I would say it's a possibility. But at least for Jimmy's sake, if he's somewhere watching from afar, monitoring the situation, it would make him happy to know that if his record will still stand after 2 seasons of all points counting here. So which makes the feat at the time all the more impressive there. That's for Dirt McGirt. Let's take a look at his team. He had Goff go for almost 73 points. Gotta love that. Over 500 passing yards, 45 completions. I'm sure he felt pretty good seeing that happen, but then the rest of your team and seeing what Gag's team was doing, kind of deflating there. Beckham Jr., he was at 0 for pretty much most of the game. Ended up getting you 4. DJ Moore, 7.5. Scantling, 7.5. So single digits from all your receivers there. That always hurts. Kerryon Johnson and Carlos Hyde, your 2 running backs, 18.5, 10.5. Engram, only 9.5 there. Mike Evans in the flex, 19 points there. Not too often I would imagine that Mike Evans is going to get outscored by Jarvis Landry, but it happened this week. Kicker, Mayer from Dallas, looks like about 3 points or so. And then you had the Rams defense in this crazy shootout. Looks like they had a touchdown turnover there. Yahoo says 11. So based on the difference there, you must have gotten about the actual total. I'm guessing was 17 or so, something like that. But yeah, bunch of single-digit scores there. That is never going to work when the team you're up against pops off for the highest score of the year so far. Just plain old bad luck for a lot of guys this year, I think, in terms of matchups and where they sit in the standings right now. And Dirt McGirt is definitely one of those. He drops to 1-3. He is in 9th place, while Gags to Riches moves to 3-1. And since we lost both of our undefeated teams this week, Gags to Riches leaps up all the way to the number 1 position by quite a large point margin. Take a look at that whenever we get finished with the matchups here. All right, next one, we had the other 200-point score this week, which was Hillbillies on PCP, coming down to Monday night, getting way more than he needed from the Pittsburgh Steelers defense against Cincinnati. Was actually behind by just a little bit going into Monday night, a point or so, which is typical place to be for Hillbillies on PCP. But fortunately for him, he went from being down 1 to winning by almost 40 here. So his score, 228.45. For Mighty Midgets, almost 200, 191.55 points in defeat. His first defeat of the season. Take a look at Hillbillies. He had Matthew Stafford go for 47.5. Take a look at your bench here. Winston went for 63. Probably, I think he had a long touchdown, so he would have been 66. Fortunately, so it didn't cost you there. Choosing your quarterbacks. Receivers, Galladay, Metcalf, and Emmanuel Sanders. 23.5, 1.5, and 15.5. McCaffrey, bouncing back for another big game. 34 points from him. So he's gone for 46, 7, 31, and 34, respectively there. So we'll see how that goes. Everyone's going to hope that they get to play Christian McCaffrey in the week every week, every 3 or 4 weeks or so, perhaps, that he's going to have a single-digit score once every 4 weeks. So we've gone through 4 weeks. So sometime in these next 4 weeks, whoever plays Brian is going to hope and pray that they get that 1 week against him where McCaffrey has his single-digit score. Anyway, Dalvin Cook, tough matchup for him. Still managed a touchdown here against the Bears. 19 points. Austin Hooper, perhaps the tight end of the year so far. He has been going wild. Another 22 points from him this week. Let's see. Derrick Henry in the flex, just under 15. Lutz, your kicker, got you about 14 or so. And then Steelers defense, Yahoo says 23. I believe the actual total was closer to 35, 38, something like that. Said it was enough to pull you past and comfortably ahead of Mighty Midgets this week. Hillbillies, you moved to 2-2. You are now in 5th place, while Mighty Midgets drops to 3-1, although he is in 2nd place. And I believe our other final matchup was the other undefeated team. And like I said, we no longer have any undefeated teams, as Shawshank Athletics, going from, I think, 0-2, coming back to 500 here at 2-2. He knocks off in the Juju hole 190.8 to 143.4. And based on the play that I've seen over the past couple weeks, I think it might be Ed taking it in his own Juju hole this year, because Juju Smith-Schuster, since Ben Roethlisberger has disappeared, he has disappeared as well. Outside of his one long touchdown bomb that he has done almost nothing. I believe, just taking a quick look at his box score here, said 4 points this week. If you take away his touchdown last week, his long touchdown, he would have only had another 4 points or so. So single-digit scores here from Juju. And the way that the game plan looks, I have Juju Smith in a different league, and I am considering benching him because the way that of course, as soon as you put him on the bench, he'll turn things around, and he'll have a big day. But the way things are going, it's hard. And just watching the Steelers play, he's really, like I said, he's disappeared from the games since Roethlisberger has been gone. Really disappointing, though, because I think everyone was expecting a huge season from him. And unfortunately, Roethlisberger going down, Rudolph being in, Steelers have kind of had to change up the way that they're running their offense this year. And everybody, there's people in every single fantasy football league, I think, who probably spent a first or high second round pick on Juju this year, unless of course you had him as a keeper somewhere down in the teens there. But yeah, Juju taking it in his own Juju hole this week. Shawshank, we should talk about you because you won the matchup. Why are we talking about the guy that lost? Let's see. You went with Russell Wilson, I think, of course, this week because no decision to be made because Garoppolo was on bye. Let's see. 38.5 points there. Your receivers, Cooper, Robinson, and Boyd, about 10, 14.5, and 6.5, respectively. Probably the hugest difference maker in this matchup, your two running backs, perhaps the best games of their NFL careers thus far, Leonard Fournette and Nick Chubb. Fournette going over 200 yards rushing. I don't know if he had any touchdowns there. It's not showing here. But it looks like he had over 30 points, about 32 for you. Meanwhile, Nick Chubb wasn't over 200 yards, but he was well over 100. Scored 3 touchdowns, including a long touchdown there. I think about half of his yards must have come on that long touchdown run there. But he got you about 42.5 points there. So looks like about 75 points from those two guys combined. Half of what you needed to get past Juju this week. Your tight end, Andrews, 13. Zeke in the flex, 16.5. Sly, your kicker, slyly putting up another 12 or 13 points. And unfortunately for you, the Baltimore defense here, kind of a surprising outcome in Baltimore, going against Cleveland. And they got crushed, as you know, by your own guy, Chubb. Fortunately, it didn't cost you in the results here. Baltimore, so Yahoo's score says 4, but I believe we talked about it, that Chubb's bonus for his long touchdown was canceled out by Baltimore actually scoring only 1 point, while Yahoo says 4 there. So we had to add 3 and then cut 3 from your score there, so it kind of balanced out. More than enough, though, to get past in the Juju hole this week, as he had Tom Brady in a tough matchup at Buffalo. Only 22 points from him this week, no touchdowns. Diggs looks like he had kind of a bounce back game for him compared to how he's been for the season here. Single digits this year up until now, just under 16. Like I said, Juju Smith, 4.5. The big one here, mentioned earlier in the review here, Devontae Adams went 10 for 180, so he got a yardage bonus there. Let's see, 31 points from him. Philip Lindsay, 7 points. You picked up, made a big splash here with your fab dollars, picking up Gallman to replace Saquon. Looks like that might be working out pretty well for you, but not in this matchup. Maybe in the coming weeks ahead here. We'll see what happens, but yeah, you spent the money and you got the results here. Almost 28 points from Gallman this week. I think multiple touchdowns. But a lot of bad scores here from the rest of your guys. So Delaney Walker, only 1.5. Mecole Hardman in the flex. No big plays for him this week. Looks like only 2 catches and he lost a fumble. Canceling out those 2 catches. He actually only got you 1 point. Just under 1 point. Boswell, your kicker, got you about 10. And then Chiefs defense got a long touchdown there, so you got a bonus. They won the game. Yahoo says 16. And I believe the actual total, looking at your difference here, must have been about, so add about 6 there, so 22-ish for the Chiefs defense. But yeah, 20 points from your quarterback and a handful of single-digit scores there. Not going to be enough to get a win more often than not. Although I guess you would have beaten both the Isotopes and Possum Magic and 10 XL entries this week. So yeah, I'm here saying talking crap on your team, but you would have beaten 3 other teams this week here. So no room for me to talk about in the Juju hole here. Let's see. So with that win, Shawshank moves to 2-2. He is all the way up now to 6th place, while Juju Hole, he is 3-1. He is in 4th place. So not too bad place to be. Said even though you got your first loss there, still feeling good. Take a quick look here. It's already late. We had a late night at work, things going on. So by the time I get this posted, it's going to be pretty late. So not too much else to talk about. I think said Gags to Riches, we were going to take a look at him. He is in 1st place now. He is more than 100 points ahead of Mighty Midgets, who is in 2nd place and also 2nd in terms of overall points there. So yeah, Gags to Riches, I don't know if it'll show here. He's averaging 220 points a week. So I don't know what is going on. Hopefully his team is spending all his energy here in the first part of the season, and he kind of runs out of steam as the year goes on. We'll see what happens here. At least we're all hoping for the rest of us here. Also, in the Juju hole, you dodged the knockout pool last week, but this week it came back for you, and you were eliminated from the knockout pool this week. That makes Possum Magic, Springfield Isotopes, 10 XL entries, and in the Juju hole, being the 4 teams already eliminated from the knockout pool. All right, so we have no more winless teams, no more undefeated teams. Let's take a quick peek at week 5 and see how the matchups are going to shake up here. Let's see, we've got Isotopes versus Dub C, should be pretty good. Taking a look to see with like any of the same any teams with the same record here playing each other. Those are going to be the most interesting matchups to watch. Yes, we've got Dirt McGirt going up against Yinzer Jags. Detling versus Justin. One of you, you're both 1-3. So one of you is going to be guaranteed to fall to 1-4. A pretty deep hole to be in after 5 weeks in the season. So not going to say we're kissing any of your playoff hopes goodbye. But yeah, one of you is going to be in a pretty tough spot here after this week. We've got 2 3-1 teams going up against each other here. Midgets versus Juju. Although it seems to be 2 teams heading in different directions as the season is wearing on here. Just taking a look at your lineups and the way things seem to be shaking out. Let's see. Possum Magic versus Shawshank. Disco versus Hillbillies. Disco trying to get back to his winning ways. Should be an interesting matchup. Disco actually looks like he's favored by a little bit, but the Yahoo projections don't usually matter too much. They're not usually fairly inaccurate, I would say, though. So it's going to be a lot of interesting matchups. Gags trying to get a win. Let's see, because we have 4 3-1 teams. 2 of them are playing each other, so one of them is going to be guaranteed to get win number 4. Dub C trying to get win number 4. Gags trying to get number 4. Both possibilities for them. They're playing 2-2 teams. So, yeah, we could have as many as 3 teams get the 4 wins this week. I'm sure for all the rest of us, though, we are hoping not, and things get more muddled in the middle of the standings. No one really not having it. It's always more interesting the less there are teams that kind of break away from the pack early on. Although we've kind of had that, but when you really consider it, said Disco, he was still right even though he was 0-3, he was only one game away from making a pretty significant jump in the standings there. If he could have gotten maybe a better point total, if let's see, Godwin had been in there. Actually, I don't think that would have made a difference taking a look at the standings, because Dirt McGirt would still be ahead of you in points, but not by a whole lot there. So, yeah, we're going to have some consequential matchups here in terms of playoffs standings here. Looking to make, everybody's looking to make their playoff runs as we are rapidly approaching the midpoint of the season here. So, yeah. All right, 45 minutes. I think it's already pretty late for me. Going to be late tonight getting this up, so I should try to keep it as short as possible. So I think I'm going to do that and just say thanks everyone for another good week. Thanks for watching or listening or whatever you choose to do on the I keep almost saying podcast, but on the review here. But yeah, good luck to everyone this week. Hopefully we avoid injuries and everyone has a good week. And we'll see you back here again for the Week 5 recap. All right, thanks everybody, and we'll see you then.